Good morning and welcome to our public logic and accuracy test for the May 21st Goodyear jurisdictional election. This is actually our second logic and accuracy test. On April 23rd, we did our first logic and accuracy test. That was just of our accessible voting devices that were used at our replacement ballot site. We actually have a replacement ballot site open in the Goodyear Civic Center, City Hall, GSQ as they like to call it. Right now serving voters. So if someone needed to get so this is an all-mail election, so every registered voter were sent a ballot through the mail. But if they damaged their ballot, they made a mistake, or they lost their ballot and they needed a replacement, they could go to that replacement ballot site right now and get that. And we have an accessible voting device that went through logic and accuracy tests. At that test, we actually printed some ballots from the accessible voting devices that will be tested today on our central count equipment. So today we're going to be testing 3 different pieces of our central count equipment. 2 of our High Pro machines is going to be High Pro 1 and High Pro 2, and then 1 of our Canon tabulators as well. And it's going to be a fairly quick test. I think my intro is probably longer, or maybe longer than what the test will actually entail. But we're going to start with checking some zeros on our tabulators. So right now we have the city clerk from Goodyear here that's going to be assisting, and then we have a Republican and Democratic representative. And so right now they're looking that there have been no ballots tabulated on any of the equipment that we'll be testing. And the reason we're only testing the 3 tabulators, these are the only 3 tabulators that we're going to use for this election. So again, that's High Pro 1, High Pro 2, and then it's going to be Canon 14. And so they can go and they can log in to each of the tabulators, and it shows how many ballots have been tabulated for this election. And they're going to confirm it's 0, they're going to log that. And then after they've logged it at each individual tabulator, then they're going to go look at our election management system report. It's going to be a report that's similar to this that I'm holding in my hand. And they're actually going to go over there and look at it right now and make sure that what's been loaded into the election management system is also showing zeros.
Initial right here, anywhere on the page. Yep. And all of these? Yeah, and all the way down the column.
So they're initialing that there were 0 ballots tabulated on each of the equipment, and that the 0 report actually does show 0. Now for this election, again, it's only 1 jurisdiction that's participating, that's the city of Goodyear, and they just have 1 question on the ballot. So that's the only question on the ballot that we're having to test. And it's about their general plan that they're putting before the voters.
All right, we're going to get ready to tabulate. Just come around here.
Okay, so we have a total of 78 ballots that are part of the official logic and accuracy test. And then we have a handful of other ballots that are our quality assurance, our error handling ballots that will also run. So first they're going to run the actual ballots for this election. And you can see this one, the stack that she has right now, that is an accessible voting device ballot. Those were printed on April 23rd when we did the initial test. So you'll be able to hear the machines operating. This machine here is one of our high-speed scanners. It is rated to be able to tabulate 8,000 ballots per hour. And that could even be a ballot that has 100 contests on it. That's 22 inches long, contests on both the front and back. It still can tabulate that at 8,000 per hour. However, when we add a whole bunch of manual logging that we're required to do based on for our chain of custody procedures, it does lower the throughput to about 4,000 ballots per hour. So they've accepted the first batch of the accessible voting device ballots. Now they're running that standard ballots that were mailed out, or would look like what you'd receive if a ballot was mailed out to you and you received it in your mail packet. And accepting results. The other piece of this test will also be we'll be testing something called electronic adjudication. I'll get to that in a second. So this is our error handling, our quality assurance test that we're going to do. And sometimes voters will return ballots to us that maybe they spilt coffee on, so there's a coffee stain. Or, so that'd be an example of a stained ballot that was returned to us. Other times, voters, the instructions are very clear. Not to use red ink, right? To use blue or black ink, but sometimes voters will use red ink. Those won't actually, our tabulators can't read red ink, and that's why we only use
pens that we use in the BTC we're testing.
Yeah, so you can see the red ink here. The only color pen that we will use anytime we're handling ballots or within the ballot tabulation center is red ink. Sometimes a ballot could be, through processing, they could get tied together. So we've actually taped. We're simulating a double-fed ballot here as well. Sometimes voters in the envelope that we sent to them, they might include a ballot from a prior election. So we're testing that to make sure that it actually won't read that ballot from a prior election. And then sometimes ballots could be torn. And the timing marks. Yeah, so we're going to test that as well.
So the first two are going to be accepted. This is the stained and red pen.
Stained and red pen ballot.
And this is good. These are going to get accepted.
Okay.
And we accepted them because we're going to make sure that they appear over there.
Yes.
Say that to the mic.
So the reason these are accepted is we want to see what this will look like when it goes through electronic adjudication. Because this is a red ink and our tabulators don't read red ink, it's actually going to show as a blank ballot. We did identify it here, so our adjudicators can see that this is a blank ballot and was due to the red ink. And then the same with what a coffee stain or a stained ballot would look like.
And this is the one where the timing mark is obstructed.
So that would be rejected, and you can actually see on the screen where the tear in the ballot. So if a voter returned this to us, we would actually need to duplicate that, and that would be done by a bipartisan board, a Republican and Democrat, sitting together, duplicating that ballot, and then would have a marrying number that would assign to it that would then match the ballot that we duplicate that then could be tabulated.
All right, and here's the wrong election ballot, same thing.
Now, the vast majority of these issues would be identified by our human early ballot processing boards. So when they're separating that ballot from the envelope, they are comparing, making sure that they have the right election ballot inside that envelope. They're looking to see if a voter used red ink, if there's an obvious coffee stain or tear on the ballot. So they can identify it there. But if they were to make a mistake, all humans are susceptible to be making a mistake, and they ended up here. That's why we're testing it to see how it would interact with our equipment.
And this double feed is going to go out the back, and it's going to give me an error here.
Now, one question we get is how do we ensure that we aren't reading in more ballots than we receive? And when, the double feed ballot. So when our early ballot processing boards are separating the ballot from the affidavit envelope, they create a chain of custody document that lists how many ballots they're sending to tabulation. Here, we run those ballots through our tabulators and we compare those numbers, and they should match. The only reason they would not match is if, for example, we had that one torn ballot and it needed to go to duplication, but we'd have a log that tracks all of that information. So now we're going to go to electronic adjudication. And I think you're probably going to see me on a different camera, but I'll continue to talk to you as I walk over, and I'll describe what adjudication is.
Oh, no. They're done.
Oh, did they already finish adjudication? Oh, they already did
I
it.
should have told you guys
But
to
that's
wait.
fine.
That's all
No,
right.
but so these are our adjudication boards that we've hired for this election. They're assisting us with the logic and accuracy test. So reason things come to electronic adjudication,
You need to move this way.
and this is a
See the mark on the ground?
Oh, yes, I see that. But I think it's wide enough that they can still see me. And federal law and state law requires that if our tabulation equipment can't determine a voter's intent, that we need to hire citizen boards, and they have to be, based on state statute, Republicans and Democrats working together. Actually, for a jurisdictional that's nonpartisan like this, they just have to be members of two differing parties, but we always follow the same practice here at Maricopa County and have a Republican and Democrat working together. And then the third member of the board is an independent or an inspector, and we will only hire independents into this role, and so these are our individuals. And then they have to review the ballot to see if they can determine a voter's intent. Reasons why our systems wouldn't be able to look at voter intent. Not in this election, but in like a primary or general, write-in. So our equipment can't read handwriting, right? So if they fill in that write-in oval, then the boards will have to review that to determine was that a qualified write-in or not, and could they award the vote. But there's other times where a voter might correct their vote, right? So they're filling out their ballot and they decide, oh, I no longer want to vote for this contest this way, and so they put an X through their original mark, and they'll refill in another oval, and they'll put a yes, like it's very clearly identified, and then our citizen boards are able to say, oh, yep, the voter did correct this vote. They wanted to vote this way, and our tabulation equipment would have read that as an overvote because both ovals were filled in, and then they've corrected it. So they're able to do that, and as they do their work, they create handwritten logs of every action they're taking. We produce system-generated logs of every action they took, and they have to reconcile that at the end of every shift to make sure that they match before we load the results into the election management system. So right now, the team is producing the results from the ballots that we just ran. So just a few more minutes, and then we'll go and do the final review of results. And then that will conclude our logic and accuracy test, and we'll need to make sure they match, though. So a few other security features within our ballot tabulation center. So you can't see the outside of our building, but we have a big fence that's external to the building that someone would have to gain entry to get access to the building. Within this room itself, it's controlled through badge access, and individuals that have a job responsibility or oversight are the only ones allowed that have access through a badge. Anyone else would need to be accompanied by someone that does have a job responsibility. All of our equipment is not connected to the internet, and you can actually follow that through our wires, exposed racking here. So any blue wire goes from our tabulation equipment to our server. A white wire is from the adjudication stations that you saw. We also have yellow wires that's going from our election management system to a printer. But now we're going to review the results.
Allie, do you want to read the results?
So what am I reading right here?
Just the top there.
So our
Early voters cast 58. Do we read provisional too? Provisional 20. I have a total of 78.
All right, and then you're going to go down to the results. So, yeah, there you go.
This one?
Yep.
Or this one?
You can do them all. Under
Okay.
votes, over votes.
So the times cast, 78. Under votes is 14. Over votes is 12. For the candidate, we have 18 yes, 34 no, for total votes of 52.
Does that match?
It does.
Match. So we passed our logic and accuracy test, and there was a couple words that you might have heard, overvotes and undervotes. So I did explain an overvote over at the adjudication station. So an overvote is any time a voter fills in more ovals than what's allowed. So for this election, there's a single contest on the ballot, and it is just a vote for one. So it's a yes-no question for the voters. So if the voter would have filled in both the yes and the no oval, then that would constitute an overvote. There are times, though, that sometimes voters send back a ballot and they don't vote a contest at all, and that's an indication of an undervote. So the last piece of this is they're going to just sign some paperwork, and then we're going to wrap up our logic and accuracy test. Now, those that are watching online, this test, just a forewarning, when we get to the primary election, our logic and accuracy test, that takes much, much longer because for two reasons. One is the Secretary of State the independent entity not tied to the counties. They have to go out and do logic and accuracy tests for all the different counties, including Maricopa County. So they'll come in and they'll test do a logic and accuracy test on all of our equipment, including any on-site tabulators that we're sending to the voting locations for any federal, statewide, legislative contests. And then we have to do our own public logic and accuracy test. And that could take, between the two, 5, 6, 7 hours even for that test. So just get all your food ready, your soda, your popcorn, and you can join us for a whole afternoon when we do that test. And that'll be notified through, we'll send publish this in a newspaper.
Primary election,
And
LNA is actually July 2nd. We already know this, in the morning.
July 2nd in the morning is when our public logic and accuracy test will be for the primary election. So with that, we're going to go ahead and sign off. Thank you for joining us today.
We actually do know the date already.